kind of freaking out. I said, here's a paper and pencil. Write down what you people have seen. There were about 25 of us there. Don't talk. Write it down. They wrote it down. They all saw the same thing. Now, we were firing off several different cameras by professional photographers way back when. And all we got were these weird lights. One that was framing Doris Byther on her bed. It's an arc of light that comes from the low point, goes low, goes over her, and comes down. And we were shooting at 1/60th of a second. So whatever it was must have been moving very rapidly. And what's interesting is, look at the pictures. Again, it's on my website. It's in my book. The walls behind the light meet at a 90-degree angle. So if this was a projected light source, it would be bent in accordance with the wall. But it is not. So that means the light's in free space. We got a picture of this arc. It was extraordinary. And another picture where Doris was not in frame, and you see two lights, one going bottom to bottom, arcing, and the other top to top, and they're basically at 90-degree angles to each other. We never saw that either. Now, the negatives, this is a 35 millimeter single lens reflex cameras. No digital, no phones, no nothing. Cameras. Shooting Tri-X was pushed in development. Anyway, we gave the negatives to the West Coast editor of Popular Photography, a man by the name of Adrian Vance. And he analyzed it. He said, I have no idea what this is. He said, an SLR should prohibit this type of thing from occurring. I said, yeah. Why? Yes and no. We don't know. Anyway, at one point, we came over in the middle of the night. Doris was screaming. The fuse box was torn out of the wall and thrown at her. It missed her.
Oh,
and there's
wow.
where it gets...
I said, wow.
Yeah, it's things are all kinds of things are happening. And now this is what makes the case really bizarre, more so than just a haunting or a poltergeist case. Okay, Doris had 4 children. They're a very young female daughter. We never met her. Thank God she wasn't there when we were there. And then she had 3 children. One boy about 16 or 17, one about 13 or 14, one about 11, and each from a different man, as was the girl. So she had a very odd environment. Now, she claimed that with 3 male entities attacked her, the 2 smaller ones would hold her down, and the larger 3rd one would rape her. You don't need a degree in psychology or training in psychoanalysis to see the links between the 3 male children. And Doris was walking around the house naked half the time and the whole bit. Very kind of strange family. And it got to the point to where we realized that what are we going to do? So finally Doris was able to move. She moved from Culver City to Carson. And we didn't talk about her. We didn't give her name out. We hadn't published anything yet. We lost track of her for a while. Now, before she moved, a man we knew, he was the writer and director of the thing called The Stately Ghosts of England, Frank D. Felita. I already knew him, and he came and met Doris, was there with us on 1 or 2 occasions at the house, and he witnessed some of the lights that were extraordinary. And he interviewed her and wrote a book about this case called The Entity. And it was a fictitious book. There were some elements of truth, but it was a novel. And it did really well. And there was a movie eventually made. And I didn't like the movie because they hired a different director right before the film was made. And he rewrote a lot of the script and weakened it, in my opinion. And Barbara Hershey did an extraordinary job. I mean, not good, she did an extraordinary job performing. And and yet she pleaded with Frank D. Felita to be in the movie, as did Ron Silver, who was the male lead. And after all this, the movie got some very negative press. They thought it was very misogynistic, and which we didn't believe. Anyway, years later, both Ron Silver and Barbara Hershey said it was the biggest mistake of their life to work in that movie because they got nothing but negative feedback from it. And, we can't prove what happened. nor could we not prove it. There were too many witnesses. But I'm willing to bet if we had the instruments that exist today, we would have known a lot more than we knew back then. I was only 25 years old. Doris Beitler was so evasive. When I quizzed her as to a lot of questions about herself, she wouldn't answer. Not even her age. Okay, if that happens today, thank you. I'm gone.
Oh, yeah.
Don't give us your head. I don't need that. So she moved to Carson. We found her eventually with the help of Frank DiFelita. We were at a new place, and none of the neighbors knew about her. She kept herself quiet, which was good for her and everyone else. And phenomena start breaking out in her house or to neighbor's house. They come home, they find stuff overturned, furniture stacked up on the wall, all the plates stacked up on the floor, garbage dumped out all over. And no one broke in, no one was there. And so we had a seance in her new house, thinking that might trigger something, as it did in the first house. And a big explosion occurred, and something took a vase that was outside our group, threw it past everyone in the dark yet. It hit the floor and exploded, spewing its contents, the water and soil on the floor. And I had a high-end video recorder next to me, and we could hear heavy breathing slowly approaching the condenser mic, slowly, and you hear a footstep, drag, footstep, drag, like the Mummy movies from Universal back in the 30s, and very melodramatic. And then the recorder turned itself off for the first time. Okay, so anyway, eventually Doris moved again to Riverside, I think, or San Bernardino, and the phenomena followed her there. Different things would happen. The water turned itself on and off, banging noises. We'd hear people talking when nobody was there. And then, we lost track of her. We found out that she died, I think, in 1998 or 99. She died of cardiopulmonary arrest, yet she wasn't that old. She was in her late 50s. So why did she die? They don't know, the doctor. She just died. Her body just, even though they could find no particular element, no somatic element as to why her body failed, it failed. Now, one of my friends, he runs ghosttheory.com, Javier Ortega, he was able to interview one of Doris Beitler's sons, and it was a really hard interview to read because he kept contradicting himself in what he was saying, which, of course, suggests that he was lying or didn't remember some of the events that happened so long ago. And he confirmed some stuff, then he contradicted himself, but there was only one of her children who wasn't messed up on drugs or alcohol. And that one, Javier spent a lot of time interviewing, but that's not what the first interview was about on the website. Now, Doris passed away, and in my files, I had a few other cases that really stand up and are very extreme. One was 1976, the Hollymont case. You can find that on my website. It's called The Hollymont Haunting, As Good as It Gets. It's a lengthy article. Some of it will be in my new book. And house on Hollymont Drive in Hollywood near Argyle and Franklin. It dead ends right into the hill. And there are two earthquake faults meet almost directly under the house. The shallow river under it. A body was buried under it from 1922. We're investigating the case in 1976. All hell broke loose. It was amazing, some of the stuff that happened. Flying dishes, pots and pans, thousands of pennies running down from nowhere, apporting and falling to the floor. Objects spontaneously combusting, power going on and off, things appearing and disappearing right in front of you. It was just continuous. Now, we were there back in the like I said, in the 76, 77, 78. Then it was sold or rented, and then moved in. People moved in, they moved out. People moved in, they moved out. And it was recently renovated. It had a lot of water erosion problems. It was renovated. I don't know when anyone's living in it, but we were there last in 2008 before it was renovated. And I had my Pelican case with all my instruments. So a few things happened in the house, but nothing real dramatic. The chandelier started swinging. There was just an earthquake. Got the readings we got on instruments were nothing to speak of. There's no big deal. But the phenomena isn't always there, meaning the phenomena appears to be dependent on a useful electromagnetic environment, which may allow this stuff to manifest the way it does. And then Lori Jacobson showed up, who wrote the book Hollywood Haunted. She always wanted to go. She was in town. I told her we'd be there. A few things happened. Barry Conrad, my colleague at the time, was taking a picture in the bathroom, and you see this perfect rainbow, 5 colors, in the shower. What? The water? Where is the water in the shower? What's produced in the effect? No one knew. Chandelier started swinging. It was amazing. So anyway, we're leaving, and I pick up the Pelican case to start. After I packed it up, I noticed on the bottom of the Pelican case there was something that was chiseled or carved into that hard material. It was a backwards R, a lazy R. And that's relevant because the woman buried under the house during Prohibition, very likely, they used to probably run alcohol under those homes. The name on the tombstone is Regina.
Oh, wow.
And if someone had been carving my Pelican case like that with a hammer and chisel, I would have heard it. You would have to really put some effort into it. So the house was sold, renovated, rented or sold, and it stands the test of time. And one other case that was extraordinary.
Okay, let's wait for the other case after our break. Okay. We got to take a break. Okay. I'm going to say this because we got about a minute. I'm going to say it real fast. When I was a little kid, I'm 68. I was probably about 8, 9 years old. My grandfather moved up to the Seattle area, and they rented a small 1-bedroom house. And they were there for about a year, and my grandmother would come over, because they would come over every Friday night, play cards. And my grandmother would say things were moving in her kitchen. Cupboards would open up, dishes would, she'd do the dishes and they'd be put away. All kinds of weird things. And then the smell, like rotting flesh, then it would come and go. Well, this went on for a year, and they decided, okay, they're going to move out. They can't take it anymore. They move out and bought their own house. About a month after they move out, it was in the local Seattle Times that the guy who owned the house, who rented it, he murdered his wife. He buried her underneath the house, the little crawl space between the dirt and the in the bedroom, and all this stuff was going on. So I don't know if she was getting weird things that were going. Trying to say, hey, I'm buried underneath the house. But I tell you, it was rather, when you're a little kid and you have your grandmother crying by saying this stuff was going on, Wow. My grandfather was sitting there, telling my dad, I think Emma is going crazy, because, she would swear, I washed the dishes. I didn't put them away. They got put away on their own. Little things like that. Anyway, we're going to go on break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. We'll have Dr.Barry Taff back on telling us more. So stay tuned. Tell your friends about us. You can find us at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. We'll be back.
Maggot was a biker and drove his motorcycle very fast. Drove a big chop Harley with a gang color jacket and ran down Citizens for laughs. He had an old lady named Petula who packed an automatic 45 gun. They had just come up from California where they'd shot 6 cops for fun. Jake, he thought he was the best there was down the interstate he saw, till the day he tangled with the county sheriff who they all called 104. It was late on a Thursday evening, and Jake, he was feeling kind of mean, cause he'd just run out of his favorite drug, the one called amphetamine. So he sauntered up to Petula, and he said, say, baby, let's split. There's a little gas station